everybody. It's Raina from Blue Cypress Books, and thank you so much for joining me for Book Banter again this evening. Tonight, I will be talking to Chris Clarkson. He is a local New Orleans author, and his debut YA novel, That Summer Night on Frenchman Street, just came out in June. So I'm super excited to talk to him about his book and all the things that entail writing it and moving here to New Orleans so that he could write this and this beautiful romantic tale, which I loved. So I'm going to click the button and invite him on. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Rena. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me. I know it was like weeks ago, and I picked up your book for the first time, and when I saw it, and I'm flipping through, I'm like, how did I not know this existed? And I need to get this guy on Book Banter. Those are my two main thoughts.
Yes, and I was on Twitter and I just got your message, and I was so excited when I saw it because you were the first person that reached out to me about being on your show. So super excited.
That is adorable. It's so good to hear. I've learned from doing this and doing other events, and just maybe just being a bookseller in general. One of the things that I've learned is everyone likes to hear that they liked their book. They like to hear all of that, and don't keep that inside. If you have a positive review for any artist or any business or any person in your life, don't hold back. You tell them, hey, I loved your stuff. I love that shirt. I loved your business. That was the best cake I ever ate. Just tell people, because there's nothing bad about saying that to anybody.
That's so true. When my book first came out, for a month, I felt like I was living in this vacuum because I was like, what do people think? Do they like it? I didn't know. And so I kind of had to wait till, some reviews came in. And I was really lucky because I had two of my really good friends read my book, and they gave me such detailed critiques on it. And I told them, I was like, please be honest. If you don't like it, please tell me. But it was really great. And that was some of my first feedback from my friends.
Well, can you give us the elevator pitch? What's your book about?
Sure. So That Summer Night on Frenchman Street is about two teenagers, Tennessee Williams and Jesmine Monet. Tennessee, he is from Oxford, Mississippi, and Jesmine is a native New Orleanian. So they first meet in Commander's Palace during jazz brunch, and it is a explosive affair because Tennessee's parents, they get into this volatile argument where Bloody Marys are thrown and tables are flipped, and Tennessee is just horrified. So that's
very unbecoming Commanders.
Yes, and it's just anyone who's been to Commander's Palace knows that that's not the place where you flip tables and throw drinks. So Tennessee was horrified, and he runs into Jesmine again at her job, and he's surprised that she remembers him. And from there, they enjoy Frenchman Street. They have this great night where Jesmine plans on kind of returning him like a library book. She plans on just getting to know him for fun, for, one night dancing, enjoying Dirty Linen Night, and then never talking to him again. But it just so happens that they keep running into each other, and they start to very slowly develop feelings, which are very complicated for them.
I love how they keep running into each other because it's so New Orleans. New Orleans is the smallest big city in the world. That's something that you hear, that we say. And before you move here, you're like, okay, it's a line. It sounds great. It's marketing. I love it. But then you do, and you run into people. In New Orleans, I run into people that I know almost every day. And I'm not just talking about my neighbors. Of course, I know all my neighbors, but just people. And I have run into people that don't live in New Orleans that are visiting. And I'm walking down the street and I'm like, oh my gosh, what are you doing here? And they're, oh, we're just here for the week. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
That's so true. Even when I was a tourist, I would see the same people, and I would just be so shocked because I thought that New Orleans was so big. I was like, it's a big city. There's so many places to go. Even if I go to Audubon, I will see the same people walking around all the time. Mm-hmm. So it is a city, but it definitely has that small town feel where you will constantly run into people.
Absolutely. And I don't know what neighborhood you live in, but when I live in the Marigny, so if I was at Audubon Park, like you're saying, that would be, I mean, across town for me. And if I run into somebody, something they would say is, "Oh, what are you doing over here?" Like
Right.
what? Because they know I live on the other side of like the French Quarter. Like I live way down on the other side of town, you know. And oh, what brings you all the way up here? It could be anything, but it's so funny because you are somehow like across town, and in my car it'd probably take me 20 minutes if I take St. Charles. You
Right.
know, like if I take the for people who don't know, St. Charles would be like the one with the most traffic and the slowest most traffic, I guess. But it would still be 20 minutes away, and people are like, "Oh, you've made it all the way to the other side of town." Yeah.
I'm a driver, so I like to get in my car and drive. So I actually live in the Lower Garden District. So I will drive down St. Charles or Magazine. It takes forever driving just because of our roads. You know, they're
Oh yes.
one way for a lot of St. Charles and also Magazine. So it'll take forever, but I'll always go down there to like the Fly and Audubon and just see the same people.
I love the Fly. It's like this hidden park, and it's right there. But I lived here for probably 4 or 5 years before I knew it existed. It's like I had heard people talk about it. The Fly, the Fly. I was like, oh, I don't know what that is. And then eventually, when my son got old enough, like of taking him to parks regularly, you start looking for another park, like a park you haven't been to. And
Right.
that was what eventually took me to the Fly. So the Fly is hiding behind the zoo.
Right along the river. So you have the beautiful views. And it's just, I think before I came to New Orleans, I actually kind of researched places where I could go.
Mm-hmm.
And the Fly, some local kind of spilled the secret on that. So I made sure, even as a tourist, I took the streetcar up to the Fly, and I've been going ever since.
Yeah. It's this special park to me because you look one way and you can see the ships on the river, and sometimes a train will go by behind you, so you can like do all of this, like these huge uh engineering, like the feats of engineering to me. Like I grew up in Florida, so everything, we don't have like the big ships unless you live like maybe at Port of Miami or something. Trains just basically don't come down here that you see on a regular basis, you know. And so when I moved to New Orleans, it was like huge container ship, train. Oh my gosh, I was like a kid because I hadn't, like the only times I had seen them maybe once or twice in my life, and it was this huge deal. And now they're just right here where I live. Like here we go.
That's right. And that's one thing that I just love so much about the city, that it's just so atmospheric. Like wherever you look, there is something going on. And the views are so different from the quarter to City Park. Like you have the old live oaks in City Park, and then you have the architecture in the French Quarter. And it's just so interesting and beautiful how all of this comes together to make this city.
And where are you originally from? Because you're not from New Orleans, right?
Yes, I'm originally from Virginia Beach, Virginia.
I don't think I've ever been to Virginia Beach. I've been to Virginia. I'm a big traveler as well.
Okay. Where in
Um,
Virginia have you been to?
so mostly driving through. Like I know I've been to Richmond,
Okay.
but then I've driven through Virginia, going to a bunch of places.
Yes.
Like, but I don't know that I've gone because I don't, like the interstate doesn't go through Virginia Beach, right?
No,
No, you have
95,
to go.
it doesn't. It just kind of travels through the center, goes
Yeah,
through Richmond, and then goes back up into that terrible traffic into DC, and then
that's basically what I've done multiple times.
it's a boring drive. Like I love Virginia Beach, but going up 95, going through
Mhm.
Virginia, it's just trees everywhere you look.
Yeah, yeah. It's like once you've done it one time, you just zip through it every other time.
That's right. Put on some good music and just hopefully you have someone to talk to or talk on the phone, and just that's the best way to
Just
get.
do it. Just get where you're trying to go.
That's right.
Yeah. So what brought you to New Orleans?
So the last time I was a tourist, I actually drove from Maryland, where my family lives, down to New Orleans. So it was 17 hours. And once I got here, I was just sitting on that streetcar with my family. And I just thought, I want to live down here. So I had that thought. And then eventually circumstances just brought me down here. So
Oh,
I just
well,
kind of happened.
You manifested that.
I
You're
did
like,
manifest it. Like, I remember sitting on that streetcar and I remember saying, I am going to live in New Orleans. And here I am.
I love that. I love that so much. There's something, I mean, there's something kind of magical about those things, the ones you truly say to yourself, I'm going to do this. And you're not even like, I don't know how. I don't know how, but I know I'm gonna fill in blank.
Yeah.
Um,
I had no
and
talent, no like opportunities yet down here. I was a tourist, so I thought I knew everything about the city. But when you live here, you're like, oh wow, I didn't know much. So I had no plans, but I just ended up down here, and it's just I always look back to that. I'm just so amazed at how I thought I'm going to move down here, and it just happened. And here I am, 5 years later, still living down here.
and do you still love it?
I do. I do. New Orleans is such a interesting place. You will never find another place like it.
No, I mean, I agree. I lived in New Orleans for about a year before I knew I loved it.
Mm,
I didn't really know that New Orleans was home until I actually came back home to visit the
yeah.
first time. I loved it. I was having a good time, but whatever, I could stay, I could not stay. And then I came home, and you do those things. You see your family, you see your friends, you go to that one restaurant that you remember that isn't anywhere else. And then I did that, and I was like, now what? And then I was set here, and I started thinking of New Orleans as home. When do I go back home?
That's
Home.
right. That's right. There's something about just the excitement of being in that city. And
Yeah.
so that's what I was like channeling when I was writing That Summer Night on Frenchman Street. I was thinking about Tennessee, and I was thinking about the experience that he was having as someone who's not from here. Coming from
Mhm.
Oxford, Mississippi, New Orleans is so different from Oxford. So I was kind of channeling some of what I felt when I first came here. The music, seeing the performers, tasting the food, just being a part of the experience. And New Orleans is really a city where you can be where no one cares what you're doing. You will never be the weirdest person on the street.
Right?
Be who you want.
Exactly. I feel like when I was reading your book, I could really tell that. Like your I've told multiple people, like, your book is very much a love letter to the city, and I can tell how much you love the city. Um, you've been in New Orleans, you visited multiple times, but then you've been there living here for 5-ish
5 years.
years,
Yes.
right? And like you can tell how much you really love the city by
Yeah.
reading this book. And as a reader and a bookseller, like, you can tell the difference. You can flip 20 pages into a book about, set in New Orleans and go, this person knows what they're talking about and loves the city. Or 20 pages and you're like, this is good, but like they don't know. Like, they don't know. They don't feel it. And you can tell that you do. And that is a major, like, for anyone watching, that is 2 thumbs up for Chris's book, because you will feel like you've been transported to New Orleans
Thank you.
rereading it.
Thank you.
And so you see yourself kind of in that Tennessee a little bit.
So, what's interesting is I actually see myself as both of the characters. With Tennessee, I kind of see his wanting to fit in, his kind of feeling like a loner when he moves to New Orleans because he's a senior. And just like Tennessee, I moved to my high school during my junior year. So I didn't get to the friends that I had in Virginia, I didn't have in Maryland. So I had kind of 2 awkward years where I was kind of like, well, what am I doing? I don't know. And then there was college. So I really kind of empathized with Tennessee and I understood him. Now with Jasmine, I really felt close to her because I am also a twin. And so twins, yes, I am a twin. I have a twin sister. And my brother and sister are also twins. So 2 sets of twins in my family. So,
I'm just going to take a moment of silence for your parents.
yeah.
And we'll move on.
And my mom, she's a single mom, so she raised us all on her own. So she definitely is a superhero. I don't know how she did it. We are 6 years apart, so there was just a little bit of a breather there, but still, 4 kids. I think.
I have one, and like it's hard enough. So like, yes, absolutely. I apologize. I interrupted your flow, but Mom needed a shout out. So
She did. But with Jasmine, she's a twin, so I understood her plight of going to a different school, maybe leaving her twin, because all of their life they grew up together. That your twin is like often your best friend growing up. And so I understood the feelings that she felt of leaving behind her mom and also her brother. And also when it comes to writing the romance of it, I understood both sides. Jasmine's tendency to want to push Tennessee away, and Tennessee's tendency to want to pull her in a little bit more, just because this is the first connection where he feels like romantic connection, where he feels seen by someone.
Right. Yeah. I love the mix of blood family and found family in your book too. Like it you blend them seamlessly, and they all care and love each other, and figuring out where their place is inside like these lives, these people who are growing up and becoming, adults, and figuring out where they fit and where everyone fits, and where to get that support.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Family relationships, as well as the relationships that you make. Like me moving to New Orleans, I had no family down here. So I have made connections where there are friends where I know that I can call them for whatever. I know that if I'm just like, do you want to go watch a movie? I know that they'll be there. And that's why, like with that Summer Night on Frenchman Street, I really wanted to focus on those connections as well. Because sometimes with family, they're there for you, but sometimes you need friends and you need people that are not in your family, because they can give you a different perspective on life.
Exactly. Okay, so Tyler has a comment and a question.
Yes.
Frenchman first. Hi, Tyler. Frenchman Street is such a queer story, even though the central romance is straight. Can you talk about the role of queerness in the story and in New Orleans?
Of course. New Orleans is definitely one of those cities where I'm a queer Black male. So being in this city, that goes to, once again, being able to feel like I fit in. I don't ever feel like I stick out here. And that's so important, because New Orleans is a place where I definitely felt represented. And I feel like anyone from any walk of life, whether they are gay, bi, trans, non-binary, they can come to New Orleans and they can just find home, because there are so many queer people that are welcoming, and also people that are not queer. They're allies as well. And that's why in that Summer Night on Frenchman Street, I really wanted to bring queer people into the main focus. So even though Jasmine and Tennessee, they are not queer, basically everyone around them is.
Yeah, and I think you make amazing points, because I'm not queer, but I super appreciate just the city, how the city kind of welcomes everybody.
Right.
And I never, like, growing up in Florida, not quite so much. Anything that is off, like, isn't just like very white and straight, is like, what are they doing? What's wrong with them? What's wrong with them, basically?
Right.
And that's just it. Is I'm visiting now, same way. And when I moved to New Orleans, it's just not like no one cares what you look like, or who you love, or what you're wearing, like everyone's just like, cool shirt, and I'm like, wow, awesome. And you do that in your story. You build that much like saying that your book is a love story to New Orleans, and that's clearly part of what you work to put in your novel, and we can tell that, where it's important that we all feel accepted, and like the problems that come in your novel are the problems everyone has. Your parents are fighting, or everyone has that to some degree, and then figuring that out, and not because where you are in your environment is also rejecting you or making you feel like you shouldn't be here either. And And that's
Ultimately, I just wanted to write a story about people. I wanted to write a story about people living their lives. And that is what I really set out to do with that summer night on Frenchman Street.
Having books that, as a bookseller, I can offer to people that make them feel seen and make them feel not seen. How about that? That's a good weird way, but like is seamlessly just a story where like it's not, hey, look at this. Hey, look at this thing. Isn't that good? I put it in a story and now everyone can see it.
Right.
It's more just like, hey, here's some people.
That's right.
And it's a good story. And isn't that like, just do that.
Growing up, a lot of what I loved about writing was that I was able to explore the world. I was very different from my siblings. I was very different from my family. I was the only gay one out of 4 kids. So for me, writing was really a escape. It was where I could really understand the world. I could understand people like me. And I really think that writing and creating characters helped me to kind of open my mind and really being more accepting, because I understood through this creativity that everyone comes from different walks of life. They have different experiences. And so writing was definitely my way to feel seen as well.
Well, and then by writing and putting out the work that you do, you allow other people to be seen and to read books about themselves where they feel accepted and comfortable, and see people maybe that they don't know or don't know that they know.
That's right.
More likely.
And for me, that's so important because, say, for example, writing a character like Solange, there may be people out there that don't know someone who is trans. They don't know anyone who is a trans woman. And so for me, having Solange there, I hope it starts to open the conversation where people, they see her. They see her as a person. They see how much she loves her family, the struggles that she's going through that are normal struggles, and it really can open a conversation about just how much they love this character, not because of who she is, but also because of who she is as a person as well.
Absolutely. And books that, and like Tyler mentioned, there is a lot of queerness in your book, but it's not the front and center piece. As a bookseller, your book is a good gateway. It's a gateway book because if I get the sense, like if somebody comes in and they say, I want a queer story, I can sell it to them. Great, there it is. You're going to love this. But if somebody comes in and they're like, don't, and they say, I'm not into it, I say, okay, cool. I hear you. All right. But read this, give this a shot. If you read the back of the book, if you read all the stuff, you're not going to pick up on anything that's like a keyword that is going to make them give it back to me. But when they take it home and they like it and they come back and they say, okay, I liked this. Do you have anything else like it? I go, oh, okay. Because we just gatewayed into these other places that now are open for me. I know that. And we can go further down this thing, because really it's good writing. So just read this, and I love that about my job so much, being able to see that transition where people are like, no, and then they're like, I liked this, I liked this, I liked this, and I'm like, okay, 6 months later, you're coming back in, and I just got you to read stuff you didn't think, and now you're reading about people, and you're being exposed to different people and types of thinking and all of this stuff that you thought you were closed off to 6 months ago. And so
that's so refreshing to hear, because as the writer, I'm sitting, in my rooms or in coffee shops, just like writing away. And I'm thinking about what message I want to send out there. But it's nice to hear from the bookseller's perspective, kind of like, oh, so here's a book. This can get you thinking about things, like, even though you didn't come in for that. And that's just so nice to hear from, like, as an author.
Right. Well, so Linda has a couple of questions where we can go to how do you write. First of all, I'm going to switch her questions up. So how long did it take you to write this novel?
It took me quite a bit of time. Usually I can write a novel within 6 months, but with That Summer Night on Frenchman Street, I started writing in 2018. My life was super busy. And then there were several rounds of sending it to editors. And so I revised it multiple times. I think I've revised it at least 3 times. And in the last edit, I think I did like 100 pages in like a month. So I didn't even know what was happening. I was like, I remember really feeling like impacted by that scene, but I need to read the book like completely because I was in such a daze when I was writing it. So this book, it took way longer than most of my, I would say it took about 3 years actually for me to get it to where it's at now.
Right. That's, I mean, it's fascinating to me, the sort of behind the scenes, like even once you've finished it for yourself and then people start reading it and sending it off, they're like, this part didn't make sense to me. And then you're like, okay, here we go. And you go back and you send it back, and all the rewrites and editing and that process is something I've never really had to do for any of what I do, but it's fascinating to hear.
Yes. And I'm so thankful for my editor, Stacy Whitman, because when she went through it, she was just like, oh, well, before you said this. And I would just be like, oh, I guess I did. So so thankful I had such a great editor to kind of go through this and check after me when I was making my revisions.
Well, that's actually a perfect segue to Linda's second question, or first question. How many have you written any novels before this novel, which you kind of alluded to? So how many did you write? How does that, like, are they sitting in a drawer? What's up?
They are sitting on my computer. I have been writing for a long time. And the funny thing is that I've written at least 6 novels before That Summer Night on Frenchman Street. Fantasy novels, science fiction novels, also other contemporary novels as well. And the first time I wrote a novel and I sent it to an agent, it was a fantasy novel. I got one rejection, and that was one rejection too many for me at the time.
Yeah.
And so I had to keep writing, and over time I eventually kind of just was like, I'm going to do 5 query letters this time. I'm going to do 15 this time. And with That Summer Night on Frenchman Street, I actually got my agent, Rachel Brooks, for a different book. So I got her for a different book, and that one didn't sell, but That Summer Night on Frenchman Street was the second book that I actually presented to Rachel. And so this is the second book that I wrote under my agent that sold.
Okay, first of all, hasn't sold yet. And second of all, you're welcome. Was that a New Orleans story as well? Or since you haven't been in New Orleans that long, are these other stories set here or set somewhere else?
So there's a genre that I love to write, Southern Gothic. I don't know if you're, well,
yes.
Of course you're familiar.
I live and sell books in the South, so Southern Gothic.
Yes, I had to check myself for a second. I was like, of course Brenda knows about Southern Gothic. I mean, we live in New Orleans. Right. So I love to write Southern Gothic. And the first book that I wrote was actually set in a small town in Georgia called Peach Grove. And it was very much like kind of a crime mystery, young adult novel, but it dealt with like a lot of complex themes because I wrote it in 2016. So it dealt a lot with race and just kind of these characters kind of viewing everything that's happening and getting different viewpoints on what was going on. So it was very dark, but I really enjoyed writing it.
So you mentioned that was kind of a young adult, and this one is a young adult. Do you typically write for YA, or is that just they happen to be YA? Do you prefer it?
So I love YA because like when you go into a bookshop and you see all of the books, you see that science fiction and fantasy, like everything is together. So even when I was a kid or teenager, I would go into the young adult section and as an adult, and I would just see like I can look at all of the books. And so I just really love the idea of everything being in one place, because as a writer, my mind is kind of like all over the place. Like I want to write different genres all the time. So that's why I picked YA. But I also write children's books as well.
Well, the thing about children's books and YA is it's kind of all encompassing. Like you can have a romance YA and a mystery YA, and you can have a fantasy YA. Like you can still write like all the genres, and then it just depends what audience you're writing them for. And the same with children's books. There's mysteries, and there's, I guess, less romance with children's books, but there's, there's all these different kinds of, these different genres inside the children's books, middle grade and YA, that you don't see. And when you get to an adult book, they're like, oh, you're in mystery, you're in romance, you get to be like stuck over in these genres, which isn't stuck. It's just, everything's become separated.
Yeah.
And it's easier, I guess, to find what you're looking for, maybe, but
That's
it's
true.
harder to get like crossover.
That's right. Yeah. And when I started writing, I was like, I don't want to be fit into a box. Like, one of my favorite things about creativity is just allowing my mind to explore. Like, if I want to create a town one day, if I want to create these supernatural creatures, like, I just want to be able to wander. So that's why I picked young adult, because it's just, my mind is in different places on different days. Of course, when I'm working on a project, I need to finish that, but I'm still like in the background thinking, ooh, I would love to write fantasy. I would love to go to this world and just create.
I also find that in general, younger audiences are more accepting to go somewhere maybe they haven't been. Now, there's plenty of adults who will read whatever as well, but I find there's more adults that are like, no, I only read this, or no, that's not, I don't like that, or right. And they just won't even try. Where younger audiences will be like, okay, but it's got this romance, and it's got this thing and this stuff, and they're like, okay, I'll give it a try, and as with many things, the younger you are, the less stuck in your ways you are. But it does allow, if you have the younger readers and you try and push their envelope a little bit as younger, I think they're more likely to go outside a specific genre when they get older.
I agree. And even with that Summer Night on Frenchmen Street, I was mixing together a lot of different things. Like, it was more than just a romance. There was also a lot of healing that these characters had to do. And that's one thing that I love about young adult as well, is that you can really kind of peel back these characters and look at, like, for me, when I'm writing, I look at their childhood and how that affected them to where they are now. And I always do that, whether I'm writing contemporary or fantasy or fiction. I will always start from the beginning, and then I'll go from there.
So when you're building your characters, do you build full-on backstories and character sheets for every character, even if it doesn't end up in the story?
I do. So I will literally build a character. Before I even have the plot, sometimes I'll sit down and I will write, this character was born on this day. These are the names of their parents. This is where they were born. Do they have any siblings? This is an experience that kind of shaped them that we will have to revisit throughout the book. So I built that character from scratch. And the funny thing is I'll think that I know them. But like, even when I was writing this story, Tennessee and Jesmine, they occasionally came by and they showed me new things. And I remember Tennessee had a surprise for me, like 75, but like I was almost done with the book. And I think this was on a later draft. And he was like, oh, by the way, I did this. And I was just like, whoa. Like, I don't know how I feel about this, but it just fit. It was almost kind of like that was in the back of my head this whole time. Mm-hmm. And it just came to like the forefront during the edits.
Well, and I love this, like, that anytime I've written anything, I kind of do the same thing, because it's, for me, like, I like kind of having the characters fleshed out a little bit, and I'll do the same thing with settings. If it's a particularly, when was this building? If the building is really taking a big part of the story, when was it built? Maybe, was it built by anybody? Is that important? Who built it? Why? Has it always been a school building, or was it something else? Right? Because yes, those things can come out in the story. But for me, it's nice to kind of have this, like, you have a place to go.
Right.
And then if something changes, like you're saying, like something comes out later, you don't have to be like married to it. It's cool. It's not set in stone. It's just a place to like to go. So it helps build out your story. And then you go, oh wait, they did this, or
Right.
oh wait, this, and then you go back and go, okay, well, that happened when they were 8. Didn't know that, but now I do.
That's right. And a certain amount of planning is always needed for me because, like, the surprise Tennessee gave me was something that I could work with, something that definitely fit. But there have been times when I started writing something and a character did something which made me realize I didn't really know that character well enough. And also, I had no idea what was going on with my story. So that's why, for me, I have to take the time to kind of plan the characters and who they are, especially in a contemporary novel, because it's very character, at least in this story, it's very character based. So I needed to have an idea where they were going.
Absolutely. So are you a big outliner and everything like that of your story? Yeah.
I am.
Too.
Definitely am an outliner. I will outline like maybe like 5 chapters at a time to leave some room for my mind, which might just be like, you know what, I want to do this. And it might be something that I didn't plan on doing, but I would give myself just enough room to have an idea of where I'm going.
Right. Is it sometimes it's like, I don't know how I'm getting there yet, but I know I have to get here. So
Yes.
let's play with that.
I have a sketch that I can
Exactly. So do you write like every day, or do you try to write every
I
day?
try, but sometimes I will sit down and the words, they're coming, but there are times when I'm just so critical about everything that I'm writing. So I'll write a sentence and I'm just like, oh, that's the worst sentence ever. Delete. And then I will get so frustrated that I have to take a step back. So I really try to write every day, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. And I've learned to kind of not force it.
Yeah. I started doing something that I cannot remember who told me about this. It's not groundbreaking, so it's okay if they don't get credit. But just write, like, and they say that, just write. But even if I'm trying to write a specific, like a short story or something, and I start writing and I just think it sucks, I'm like, okay, well, look, I'm going to fill this page, or I'm going to write for 20 minutes or whatever it is, and just type it out and whatever and walk away. Don't, because that's the part. If you go back, then you're like, well, this whole thing sucks and I just wasted the last 20 minutes.
That's right.
I just walk away, and maybe I don't write any more that day, and come back, and the next day when I come back and I look at it, it doesn't all suck. Maybe there's only 2 lines that are great, or maybe there's one idea, but you didn't get there right. But like, it's never a waste of time.
Yes, and I have this quirk where, like, there will typically be one person who I like to kind of read my story to, and I like to read it to them because I can get reactions in real time. So if there's something that they don't like, I can see it. So I'm kind of reading and I'm also watching, and I can tell when something lands. And so there have been times when I've written something and I'm like, oh my God, that's so bad. And then I read it and, they're like, that's not bad. Like, that's actually really good. I really like that. So it's kind of that feedback, that interactive real-time feedback that also helps when I am just being super critical of everything I write.
I mean, I think that is brilliant and very brave.
Yeah.
You gotta be ready, because it could go either way.
And it has gone either way. I have gotten from Rose, who I actually dedicated the book to. Like, she was the one that I actually really read That Summer Night on Frenchman Street too. So she was like there from the beginning and hearing this. And sometimes I would read her a chapter and she would say, well, how did you feel about that? And I knew that was the key to, how did you feel? And that was kind of like the telltale sign that I had some work to do.
She's basically just saying, don't make me tell you.
That's
just
right.
Think about that.
Writers can be very sensitive and protective over their work. So,
Is she also from the South?
She is from Mississippi. She's actually from Oxford. So
yeah.
So
there's no way that a woman that goes, no, what did you think about that?
Yes,
wasn't from the South.
That's right. Very polite, like not trying to offend me in any way, but at the same time being very somewhat direct about kind of like, well, what did you think?
Exactly. For as sophisticated as New Orleans is, because it's a big city, I love like how just deeply Southern it can be,
Right.
and in good and for bad. But like it is this weird mix of being incredibly like sophisticated and forward thinking and everything, but then also like, well, bless your heart.
Yeah. And one interesting thing that a lot of people that are from Louisiana, they will see New Orleans and be like, oh, all of Louisiana is like New Orleans. But New Orleans is really unique. Like North Louisiana and South Louisiana are dramatically different.
Dramatically different. And it's true. You don't really notice, or you don't know until you really move here. It's not something you can see as a tourist, because as a tourist, you're usually only in the city and you just make assumptions about everywhere else. Or you go on a swamp tour or something, and that's all you see. And then you move here and you go, well, you can just go to the mall and the feeling is totally different. Like you're out to Metairie and it's like, we are not in New Orleans anymore.
That's right. And kind of a fun fact, Tennessee's mom, she is like, oh, I'm from New Orleans, but she's actually from Metairie. And I don't think I ever actually put it in the book, but her New Orleans, even though she's from Metairie, drastically different. They're not the same place.
That's so funny. Yeah, I don't remember that in the book, so I don't think that's in there. Right. Well, but it does. You're so right, because it tells you a lot about somebody without you even me now knowing that. I see. Okay, I see that. I see that feeling, because and for anybody that doesn't live in the New Orleans-ish area, like Louisiana, Mississippi area, you say I'm from New Orleans to somebody who's from Minnesota, and they're like, oh, cool, because they're not going to know what Metairie is.
Right.
But if you're here and you say you're from New Orleans, and then somebody finds out you're from Metairie, you're like, wait a minute, that's not the same.
I've seen it happen in real time. I have had people say, oh, I'm from New Orleans. And then I've had a friend say that is actually from New Orleans, say, well, where are you from? And they're like, oh, I'm from Battery or something. And they're like, oh, no,
that's not the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've lived in New Orleans for 17 years now. And when somebody says where you're from, I go, well, I'm from Florida, because I know what I know. Because if they're from New Orleans or from that area, and I say I'm from New Orleans, they're gonna start asking me where I went to high school. They're gonna start right, and I'm like, no, and then they're gonna find out I lied to them.
Oh, and don't lie about that, because they are very serious when they ask you, where did you go to school?
Yeah.
So
it means something, and yeah. So I always say, well, I've been here 17 years, but I'm originally from Florida, because they're going to know.
Yep, you're local. You're local.
Yep. Well, Chris, I just want to thank you again for joining me for Book Banter. It has been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much, Rena. I really appreciate the invite, and it's been great talking to you as well.
And thanks everyone for watching. I can see you watching. And thank you to Linda and Tyler for putting those questions in the comments. We really appreciate it. I am putting in the comments right now a link to grab a signed copy. We're going to have signed copies of Chris's book. He's going to stop in. Yes, he's going to stop in and sign our books for us. So if you use that link and purchase it through our website, we will ship you one of the signed copies that we have. And of course, you can stop by Blue Cypress if you're in the area anytime and grab a copy of his book. So thank you all for joining us this evening. And Chris, thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye.